Okay, well, hello, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here with my good friend, colleague, and co-host, Jim Gurley. And once again, we had a robust pregame. I got to stop saying that at some point, Jim, because it seems that it's always going to be the case.
Yeah.
But as far as our wheel goes, today's topic, we're going to talk about relationships today, and I'm gonna ask Jim to tell a story. Jim, you started our conversation with this story that I found very
Yeah, Mark, like you said, we always have a fun pre-game. What I thought today was interesting was we were just sharing stories in general about life experiences and how we want to reframe, how we can reframe things maybe that have happened in the past. And of course, on our weekly podcast, we use this framework that we created of these 5 areas of our life, no particular order, but often it's the profession, our worldview, our relationship with the world, um, our relationship with money, our relationship with our health, physical health, mental health, um, and our relationship with others. And often that is, well, there's two categories. It's men and women. So women, obviously, mothers, daughters, uh, wives, ex-wives, girlfriends. That is a different relationship, and that's playing out every day in our life, just like these other areas of our life are playing out. So I just thought that it was. I'll share again. I was this past weekend getting new tires, and I was waiting in the waiting room, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning. So just two other people in the waiting room, two other women, I should say, and there was like a fish tank or something on the back. So you heard this sound of water going on, and
good.
and it's like anything. It's not about awkward, but it's a tire shop. So we're sitting there. So I close my eyes, try to get a little meditation time or something. And you hear this, and I make a kind of a joke, or I feel like I'm in a spa, or I'm standing next to somebody's bathroom, right? So,
Hmm.
and they start laughing, and then we start talking, and then the subject came up about, yeah, it's like anything in life. It's just how you want to reframe it, right? Was I sitting next to a stream in this beautiful? When I closed my eyes, was I sitting next to this stream of this running water, or was I sitting next to somebody taking a leak in the bathroom? Right? It's the same sound effect. So again, they started laughing, and then I think one of us I said, "Oh yeah, you could be, at it's spa music as well." And that conversation turned into probably a solid 40 minutes of just the three of us talking about life. And
That's awesome.
yeah, it was really cool for a couple of reasons. One, it was in the morning, so it was just the three of us. For some reason, there was no interruptions, right? And one of the gals was 60 years old, so just same age as me, and the other one was like 75. So there was some real wisdom there, right?
Hmm.
And life lived experiences. Uh, and then yeah, they talked about a lot of different things. Of course, their spirituality, their church, and that's reframing it every week, right? You could say that's what church is for. Or that's what meditation is reframing things. But then also just life lived experiences with your children. So what I found was interesting was often when we talk about relationships with women, it's based on our childhood, relationships with our mother. You talked about the relationships of being a single dad raising two daughters, especially through their teenage years, and that's that's something again very few men have experienced. But women are really important of our part of our lives. They are life, right? And I think I was just reflecting at this stage in my life, my appreciation for women in the different stages that they go through in their life, but also sometimes even during certain times of the month, even though that's taboo and we shouldn't be talking about that. Uh, it does affect us, right? They have, and this is all right, not wrong.
Let me reframe that. You have permission to talk about anything you fucking want to talk about, okay?
But say they don't want us to talk about it, and
No,
then of
I hear
course,
you. I'm just fucking with you.
the the
I get it. I get it.
the new C word is crazy, right? It used to be something else, but the new C word now is if you call a woman crazy, it's not the C word it used to be. It's
Well,
that's
you
off
know,
limits.
you know what I like though,
Yeah.
that you talk about reframing something. You
Yeah.
have developed this habit now. When you say women are crazy, you follow it immediately with, but we're all crazy. And I
Oh,
think
we're
that,
all crazy in our own special ways, right?
yeah, yeah,
And it's I'm glad you mentioned, Mark. It also comes back to one thing that we talk about every week in the Imperfect Men's Club. The imperfection is the perfection, is self-awareness.
yeah.
And when you're living in self-awareness, you live in alignment and you have a certain energy where you can reframe things in a positive way. And this conversation that went on for 40 minutes was about that. Some people are just agitated, they're mad at the world for a lot of different reasons. And if you
Mhm.
can't reframe the situation to get them to calm down, and then you're not going to have a positive outcome. And it's just, this is wisdom. But it was really fascinating to hear, for two women strangers share their perspective. And
Yeah, yeah, that's, I think I love running into people that are older than I am that are happy and have the ability to be self-deprecating, making fun of themselves. And yeah, it's engaging, isn't it? And the fact that they bring up this idea of reframing things is that's pretty special. That's pretty cool.
well, it was, I brought it up. It's just that they ran with it.
They
It
ran with
became
it.
very collaborative. I brought it up about this. Remember, it was a fish tank. This
No,
noise.
no,
Uh,
but I've seen it's very clear. I mean, it's not difficult to imagine because you can, as soon as you close your eyes, like you say,
Yeah,
that running water could be five different things, you
yeah,
know, and
yeah,
and depending on which one you choose, it could be quite pleasant or it'd be kind of gross, you know,
yeah,
big
yeah,
difference.
yeah. So you'll be interested. So then the one gal, the 75-year-old gal, her car was done, so she left. Then it was just the other one, the 60-year-old, and she was married. She was on her second marriage. Really kind of a beautiful story too about how she reframed the relationship with her ex-husband, and he had some drug issues and that, and but now she was actually picking him up at the airport to visit their son for his birthday, and they had this kind of blended family now. But talk
Mm.
about reframing a relationship, right? This is, she's picking up her ex-husband at the airport, and they're gonna go have lunch with her son. So, but I'm talking about that. Those situations can typically be very contentious, right, between past relationships. So I was,
You think?
so it was pretty impressive how she was doing
I
that.
tell you, dude, talk about, I mean, I've done a lot of work on trying to reframe. I think the one thing that is very helpful to me when I get into a position where my ex is back in my life or back in my mind, which
Mhm,
doesn't happen very often. It usually comes from my children. She's
mhm,
bothering them in some capacity. But the reframe there has always been, yeah, but I have to be grateful because without her, I wouldn't have my three kids. And those are the
mhm.
three most important things in my life. So that's it.
Yeah,
It's
that's a
another
great
example. Yeah.
reframe
It,
the
it, it
situation. Yeah.
it's a choice because reframing itself is a choice, right? But it's like
Hmm.
I'm going to get stuck in the past, or I'm going to worry about the future, or I'm going to go, wow, look at what I have right now.
Hmm.
Like I'm lucky to be alive.
Hmm.
You can take this reframing exercise a lot of different ways, but back to your original point, I think it's all about self-awareness.
Yeah, so you'll appreciate this. So it came up. I mentioned something about, I think I said something about the podcast or something, and I mentioned something about how young men, younger men, not younger than, if they understood really the differences, but also the imperfection of the perfection of the desires of a woman versus the desires of a man, right? And then
Mhm.
understand that they go through these stages for a reason, but not as a conflict. But right now we have a lot of conflict, right? There's like this competition between a man and a woman, and it shouldn't be a competition. It should be a dance where you respect each other for the different desires. And so then
Yeah.
it's about reframing what what a man seeks in a relationship versus what a woman seeks in a relationship. And again, there's a lot of variables at different stages of your life, but whether you're in your 30s or 20s, 30s and 40s, it's different. Um, but the same things applies, right? So I came across the difference between um, loving somebody and longing somebody, because often they get mixed together. Where women, I think, by nature desire love, but is it really love? And men by nature desire attention or love, whatever you want to call it. So I
I
came
call it
across
I
the
call it sex
differences.
sex in a sandwich. That's what I call it.
Well, the sex is a huge part of this. Again, but you find that women are not. There's the physical part of sex, but that's not what gets a woman turned on. That
No.
it's when you make them feel secure, when you make them feel a certain way, then they get turned on. It's very different than a man, the visual parts of what turns somebody on. So yeah, like I said, it gets complicated really quick. But I think it's worthy of talking about because you start to
You know,
appreciate the different desires and the expectations. Ultimately, it is about reframing expectations and not trying to be right or wrong, but just understand the differences between a woman's desires and a man's desires at different stages of their lives.
yeah, I think that to me, this conversation begins if it's going to be effective, and not between you and me, between me and my girlfriend or my daughter or my mother or you and the respective women in your life. I think the conversation needs to start. This is just my opinion. Men and women are different. And that to me
Mhm.
is to be celebrated. It's not
Yes.
to be argued about. It's not to
Mhm.
be, and the attempt that our society has put upon us, I suppose
Mhm.
back from the 70s when feminism, whenever feminism started, it's like we want to be equal. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, is that
Mhm.
even a good goal? Right? Like I
Yeah.
don't I don't even think I'm not equal to anyone. I am
Mhm.
unique to me. And I fully embrace the fact that I'm a man and I think like a man, I feel like a man, I act like a man. I'm not apologizing for that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I think the woman feminism is wonderful. And you can be strong and feminine. Pretty's great,
Mhm.
but moderately looking is what most people are, right? Most people
Mhm.
aren't
Mhm.
pretty, most people aren't handsome. And
Yep.
so, all of these, I think the premise has been lost. And I think
Mhm.
it's confused women and it's confused men. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's a shame.
Yeah. I agree, Mark. If I could add to that too, I think the difference is that men are rather simple compared to women. Women are complicated, and again, that's it's not a insult. It's not a criticism. It's just the differences. They're much more complex. And this is my, I'm not saying this is the way it is, but my experience is it's complex because they go through different stages sometimes during the month, right? If they're still in their menstrual cycles, and so stages of reproduction that maybe in the earlier years versus say uh, postmenopause years. They're complex and they have different desires, and
Yeah.
a lot of, let's face it, our entire economy, a lot of everything is driven off these desires. And I say this in the most positive, respectful way. But I do think, to your point earlier, women need to be understood, but we also have to realize it's very dynamic. They change. There's different stages of a relationship. There's different seasons that they go through, and so do we. So it's not a one way street. I also think that men have a menstrual cycle at times, right? We have different times in a month where we probably feel better than we do at other times in a month. So it's like I said, it's reframing this. And if you could, Mark, just we I think I ran a search on comparison. I'd be interested in if you could read that out loud, and maybe we can break that down and see if this maybe shed some lights on the differences of what one seeks in a relationship versus what another one
Yeah.
seeks.
Yeah, it's the like you said, it's the difference between longing and loving someone, and
Hmm.
longing for someone and loving someone. And by definition here, what you called off the internet, longing is unrequited or unavailable, focusing on a fantasy, focusing on oneself and the reenactment of the past. And that almost sounds like a movie, right? Like loving a romance novel, loving someone in contradiction to that is mutuality and reciprocity. It's accepting reality. It's focusing on the other person's well-being and a conscious choice and commitment. It involves intimacy and trust and vulnerability. And that's why it's probably so hard because look at those last three words: intimacy, trust, and vulnerability.
Hmm.
Those are hard emotions. Those are
Hmm.
difficult,
Yep.
because they're all vulnerable. You trust someone. I mean, you commit to someone else successfully for life, marriage, so to speak. Then that vulnerability, if it's not there, it's not going to work. But in order to be vulnerable, you got to risk everything. you
Yeah,
know?
I think the other word that comes in this is the difference between love and lust. Longing, I think, falls in the same category of lust, right? I think everybody, not everybody, but men and women seek lust, but men particularly because it's much more physical. We're seeking the excitement, right? The fantasy, the dopamine, the level of excitement. Is that love? When maybe a woman is seeking love at that stage. So there's different uh, outcomes or different desires, and they get mixed up a lot,
Well, you know,
especially.
no, there's no question. I mean, there's been books written on this and movies made about this. It's a difference, man. I'm not acknowledging that there's a difference between how men and women communicate, I think is a fool's errand, you know. But
Yeah.
I was thinking, because we were talking about it in the pregame, I was thinking a lot about the different women in my life, and that would go to my sister, my mother, who took her
Hmm.
own life, and I've shared that story on this show
Hmm.
before. My
Yep.
two daughters, who I raised as both mother and father, which I've heard from many men in my life, Mark, that gives you a completely different outlook on things. And
Hmm.
I think about, because I'm so close to my daughters, we talk about almost everything. There
Hmm.
are certain things they don't share with me that I don't want them to share with me. But
Hmm.
like, the whole relationship with their boyfriend stuff, we'll talk about the emotional component of that, but not any of the other components of that. But it's different language. I speak very differently to my son than I speak to my daughters. And I think
Hmm.
that because I had to do all of these mom things like first period, boys, sex, and putting love notes in their lunch boxes like moms do. I wasn't able to do all the things that a mother could do. I didn't have the instincts that a mother has. I did the best I could, but they were pretty gentle about pulling me in because they recognized pretty early on dad needs a little help with this language. It's not innately
Hmm.
his,
Hmm.
that was fascinating for me.
Yeah. Well, it also reminds me of think of your daughter's relationship, how different that was maybe to other of their peers or friends. And then now so much of our relationships, our current relationships, have a lot to do are directly related to our childhood, to going back to what you're saying, right? So this
Mhm.
it's also just not your experiences, it's what your daughter's experience of what a man's role is,
Mhm.
and their expectations. This is why, again, this article that I shared with you, this document, it was fascinating because so much of this is relationships are based on your past, whether it was your childhood or your past relationships, and how that gets somewhat projected into your current relationships. I mean, I know you've even mentioned that with your girlfriend now, right? That a lot of her past relationships become brought into your current. A little different than my situation because I've been with the same woman for close to 40 years or married for 35. There's not a lot of past relationships there, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I remember telling you, and I say this every so often because it was, when did you know? I've been coming up on 7 years now with my girlfriend Shayla, and I just remember, I'll never forget the first time she answered the phone, and I was in her presence, and it was her dad calling, and he's subsequently passed. I did get to meet him, and he was a wonderful guy, but she answered the phone like this, "Daddy," and I'm
yeah,
like, well, she has a great relationship with her dad. Check that box, because
yeah.
that I think has so much to do with how women think of men, is how they were treated by their own father, right?
Yeah, well, let me share a perspective on that. There's no question that's a very positive relationship. There's a loving relationship, right? But it's also an expectation of what a relationship should be like for a man. Whether it's positive or negative. So it sounds like that was a positive relationship, but it's also creates an expectation of what she expects in further relationships. So this is where again I find the difference between loving and loathing, or excuse me, loving someone versus longing for somebody. They get mixed up a lot of what the expectations are.
No, they do. They do. And I think, to your point, I think as your relationship grows, if it were possible to reflect back at the beginning of your relationship, and it probably is on some level, mine's only 7 years, so it seems like yesterday. And I remember being enamored and then longing. I remember one particular instance where we started communicating regularly, daily, and I wasn't getting a return call. I went to bed without getting a return call for the first time, and I remember feeling frightened that I
Mhm.
had lost her. And that was directly related to my past relationship and the
Sure.
relationship with my mother. And then I got a phone call and there was an explanation and it was all, and she was like, then nothing happened. It was fun. Like, I don't even think I've told her that story,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
Well,
remember it.
yeah, yeah. It's again, it's in this this breakdown of the differences, um, and it's again, it's also just depends on what stage, you know, that they're at in their life, what they're seeking. Is it a soulmate for life to have children, or is it just companionship? Um, and then so much has to do with um, just what you mentioned, the fear of not having somebody going forward.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I
so
think
much is
that's
just
a,
driven in scarcity.
and
If that's
it's also age though, you know. I think that
no
I was
question.
the older you get, the more likely it is if you are alone that you're going to remain alone. I
Hmm.
don't remember worrying about that. And I remember my daughters and some of a couple of my friends saying, it's just like you. It's like you always find the parking spot right out front. You went on one fucking date and you guys are together for 7 years already, and you
Yeah,
came out of one of the shittiest relationships ever. Like, how'd
yeah,
you pull that off? I'm like, I have no
yeah. But how
idea.
many years was in between?
Oh, it's at least 10. Yeah, at least 10.
Mark, you don't just
But
leave
I,
that out
but,
of the conversation.
well,
What
no,
10 years?
there's more context to that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not just
It
you
was
just roll up to the
intentional.
next driveway, the next parking lot, and find somebody else. There was
No,
10 year space in between.
well,
And
yeah, but the context of that, Jim, and I've told you this story before, and it's relevant to this conversation, is I consciously said, I'm not introducing any new people to my children for a while. And I'm gonna make that decision. And that doesn't feel like a sacrifice. I never felt alone. And then one day, both of my daughters said at the same time in my presence, you need to see
yeah,
someone. We want you to have a relationship. So we got online, we filled out the profile. The first contact I made was my girlfriend, and she was just about to give up her subscription for the year.
yeah,
That was like we could have missed each other on a whim, and now we feel like we're perfect fits together. So
yeah.
there's more context to it than
Well, I appreciate that context. It's a 10-year context relationship, but I'm laughing because it's also that's your context. How long had she been looking, right? Like you said, it sounds like it did work out after 10 years and some help from your daughters. You decided to go out there and boom, it happened. You found the parking spot the same day. But
well,
but
I was ready for her and she was ready for me. There's no question
but
about that.
that's my point. You just because you turn it on and it became available, that may not be the case on the other end. So as far as scarcity or fear of not of being alone for the rest of your life,
Hmm.
especially at this stage, I'm saying 50, 60, or even 40 sometimes, there's a great fear of being alone.
Yeah, no, well, we see a lot of people that get divorced um, run into a new relationship immediately because it's a codependency as far as I'm concerned. It's
Yes,
not.
that's the longing
Yeah, that's the longing
versus
piece.
that's the longing piece, and that's probably more common than actually
It
looking for.
That's what I see. That's what I
Yeah,
see. And I had
yeah.
no interest in that at all. You know, and I had no interest in bar hopping or one night stands or any of that shit. I was like,
Oh, it's just again, it's completely different with the online dating versus where you're meeting somebody in a well, it doesn't have to be a bar, but just meeting somebody where you get to kind of get a feeling for who they are, versus just a screen of a cut and paste description of who they are. So
well, you know,
it's
it's my father used to tell me, you're gonna meet her at church. And I'm like, yeah. Okay, Dad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, it is interesting though, because I do think there's some scarcity, and it is an hourglass. So the value of a woman, I hate to say it, nobody wants to hear this, but there is an age difference, right? That when a man could kind of doesn't have, I'm talking about physically and for other reasons, it's maybe it's not fair, but it's reality that women will age more after a certain period than a man, and it's not
Yeah, it's
uncommon.
Yeah, I think I've heard women say that before. It's not fair that, you guys age more gracefully than wrinkles on you are maturity, and on us it's we're getting ugly. And it's like that's a reframing problem in my estimation, because I know women that are that look old, but they're also charming and attractive, and
Yeah, but it's all relative, right? It's
it's
all
a I
relative.
think that I think that real love is on the inside. And
Mhm.
yeah, the outside piece makes it maybe a little easier to get started,
Yeah.
maybe. But I mean, if you're solely attracted to somebody because of how they look, that's not going to last. I mean, we all get old, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I just come across some of these videos about there's I guess there's these calculators where a woman is looking for a man that has a certain income or certain profession, a certain height, a certain whatever it is, right? All these things, and then so statistically they can run the percentage of the population that has that,
Hmm.
and the math doesn't lie. It's really remarkable to see the difference, right? Most women are seeking a man that is less than 1% of the population,
Yeah.
and of course they act as if they're a 10. They're not a 10, but they want a 10, and they hold out, or they think that there's going to be the perfect guy with the right income, the right everything, and it's just not practical. And the dating apps are that statistically the top 10% of the guys get 90% of the women, so the other 90% of the guys don't get anything. And
Yeah, those I've seen that data, and it is
have
interesting.
it,
I think the I said something earlier. Maybe it was the pregame, but I think that part of the problem, because I my one of my daughters just turned 37, and the other one's 31,
Mhm,
32, and that's you got, to your point, there's this clock's ticking thing, and whether it's looks or babies or want to have it all. I think we've really done a bad job of confusing men and women. I think,
mhm,
to back to the circling back to the end of this thing, it's like, I think if everyone could start from this premise that I referred to earlier, which is men and women are different, and we have
mhm,
to stop. I think we have to stop saying that that's a problem, and reframe that, and say, no, I think we should celebrate that, because we
mhm,
need women to be women, and they need us to be men. They don't
mhm.
need boys, they need men, right?
Yeah.
And masculinity is not on its own toxic. It can
Mhm.
become toxic. There are toxic males out there, but masculinity itself is anything but toxic. So I think
Yeah.
that's at the core of what we're reframing here. I think the conversation needs to begin there, or it could go anywhere. You know?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I referred to it as a do-it-all chick, right? A chick that thinks she can do it all, have it all. That's so unfair. Nobody can do it all. Nobody can have it all. So they can focus on their careers, they can focus on their education, and then they burn away maybe those years that looking for the right guy, or maybe not even interested in a guy because they were told they don't need a guy, and not every woman should need a guy. So I don't want to be too general, but it's clear, like you said, they go on later on in life and then they realize, hey, I'm running out of time here. If I ever want to have children, I need to have it, now. And then a lot of them just clock out. It's just a reality, and it's kind of
Well,
unfair. I think it's a social construct that we since 1965 we've told women you can have it all. You don't need a man, and now we have a situation where there's a lot of lonely people, men and women, because of it.
yeah.
And men, particularly, don't feel like they have value in society because they're not needed.
Well, yeah, I think that we need, as men. I mean, I don't do this. I know you don't do it, but young men, I see young
I'm
men do it
speaking
all
to
the time.
younger men at the moment. I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
speaking for
yeah. No, I
ourselves. Yeah.
mean, one of the things I think young men need to stop doing is apologizing for stuff they need not apologize for. You
Mhm,
open the door for a lady. That's chivalrous.
mhm,
That's masculine. And
mhm,
it's like, that's not. I'm not demeaning you. I'm
mhm,
helping you.
mhm,
I open the door for guys too, by the way.
mhm,
So it's stuff like that. I think that, and I get this because I have children of this age, and you do too. And
mhm,
whether they're talking about their friends that just got married, or, or haven't
mhm.
been married yet, or they don't want kids, or they do want kids, or they don't like men anymore, whatever. It's just like, we're confusing these young people, and we got to knock it off.
Yeah. All right, Mark, until next week.
Sounds good, Jim.
Yeah.